Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days in today's video. This takes us to around the 23rd of February, so we're heading up towards the end of the month with this update. We've had the easterly winds over the past few days, maybe not as cold as you would have expected easterly winds in February to be. I'll show you the reason for that in a second. But that's all going now, it's out of the way, and we're going to be finding progressively milder air pushing in from the south and the west over the next week or so. So I think we're going to have a little burst of spring actually by the time you get through to the weekend. Temperatures will be getting up towards below teens Celsius, which is more like what you'd expect towards the end of March and the end of, or the middle to latter stage of February. So certainly milder weather on the way. I'll show you all the detail on that in a second. But before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. If you have a browser, you click through the links, you're going to help us page website. Thanks very much for doing that. So we'll just start off with this chart, which is from the weekend. This is the GFS from the weekend, midnight on Sunday. You think it would be quite cold. It was a fairly coldish weekend, but it wasn't as cold as you might expect, really, with those easterly winds. So we have got the area of high pressure to the north of Scotland and going up towards Scandinavia. We got low pressure to the south of it. The wind was coming in from the east, so that is all set up. But the reason it wasn't a Siberian easterly is that there was quite a southerly component with this easterly wind. So if you follow the isobars back down here, you'll notice that actually the air is originating, or some of the air anyway, is originating from Italy and the central part of the Mediterranean. So although the actual wind direction was easterly, which is fair enough, getting caught up in that easterly flow was air originating from southern Europe. And so that's the reason that, whilst it was a fairly cold easterly wind, it did produce a little bit of snow, it wasn't the bitter sort of Siberian easterly that I know a lot of you are looking out for. This is from 1991. This is a proper Siberian easterly. This is from the big freeze and severe snow of February 1991. And you can see the difference quite clearly. The high pressure is centred over Scandinavia, but it's really where the isobars are going to, or where the isobars are coming from, that's the important point, because with this one, the isobars are going right way back into central parts of Russia and then pushing across the continent like that. So there's no southerly component at all with both winds. It's just a straight easterly that's bringing the air right away from Russia. So that's the difference between an easterly that's going to produce a severe cold and snowy spell of weather, such as we had in 1991, and sort of the feeble easterly, if you like, that we've had over the weekend, that easterly with much more of a southerly component as opposed to the air originating from central Russia. And so that's the reason that whilst it was a fairly cold weekend and temperatures were struggling up to around 2-3 degrees through most of the weekend, it wasn't the freeze and snowy conditions that you can get with easterly winds in the middle of winter. Anyway, as I say, that's all a thing of the past. Now the milder air from the Atlantic is on its way. The next week to 10 days, you're going to see a big push up in the temperatures. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, the GFS, have a look at that in a moment. On the bottom, 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere, high pressure, low pressure, being moved around by the jet stream running above. Blue extrapolates to low pressure, and red extrapolates to high pressure. So we're strengthening the ridge here around Iberia and going back towards the Azores. High pressure is strengthening down there. We've got this trough of low pressure that's over Scandinavia. Now that could bring some colder conditions to Scandinavia. They've had a very mild winter across Scandinavia, but when you get a trough like this entrenching over Scandinavia, sometimes it can pull colder air down from the Arctic. So it might be if you live up in Scandinavia. I know we have some people watching from Scandinavia. Might be that you could get some colder weather as we're going towards the latter stages of February. But for us, well, it's the southwesterly winds that's going to be dominating, west-southwesterly. So obviously going to be mild. We're pulling up mild air around this ridge and then pushing it over top over this ridge of high pressure. So it looks looks mostly dry, fairly dry for the south. For the north, probably more unsettled. A main thing will be the temperatures lifting up into early spring type levels. This is the GFS, and it all looks very, very similar. So again, the trough is there over Scandinavia. Then we've got that strong ridge from the Azores going through in towards southern parts of Europe. We're going through France, into parts of Spain. And the upshot is that, again, we're bringing in this west-southwesterly flow, which is delivering mild air to the UK from the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. Again, with that ridge close to the south, there'll be a lot of dry weather there. Will be more unsettled in the north, close to this trough. And again, that trough might be delivering something a bit colder in towards Scandinavia at times. But overall, for the UK, it's looking generally mild and fairly dryish, I think, really, over the next week or so. It has been a very dry winter. There's no sign of very unsettled conditions coming up. For the north, yes, the jet stream will produce some rain at times, but overall, probably continuing drier than what you'd expect. So this is all reflected in the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles the next couple of weeks. The red line here is 30-year temperature average, above average at the moment. These are the upper atmosphere, above average at the moment, significantly so in the upper air. Down on the surface, of course, it's being cold, so it can take a while to warm things up on the surface. So actually, surface temperature today, probably not much better than around what you'd expect middle part of February. But over the next few days, those temperatures will be lifting up, and it looks like we're in for a sustained period of mild weather. To be honest, no sign of anything particularly cold coming up there for the next couple of weeks. This takes us to the end of February. Actually, we go to the 1st of March with today's update from the GFS, by which time we are beginning to get some colder outlier members. You always get that, or you always get differences appearing further out you go for GFS model. But at least for the next week to 10 days, we've got a sustained period of above average temperatures coming up. Precipitation. Yes, there are some spikes coming through, particularly in the second half of the week and into the weekend. But again, nothing definitively wet there, nothing that you would look at and say, yes, we're going in to a sustained wet period. So because we're going into Atlantic flow, it will be a little bit more unsettled than we've had it. And again, that's particularly so to the north. But I think overall continuing pretty dry and just with mild temperatures for the next week to 10 days. Temperature anomalies look like this then, significantly milder than average through many parts of Europe. Those cold temperature anomalies now being pushed down into the southeast of Europe around the Black Sea, going off towards Turkey. Most parts of Europe going above average. Scandinavia still looking significantly warmer than average. But as I say, as that trough gets in over Scandinavia towards the end of February, we might start to find things turning a little bit colder there. For the UK and for Ireland, it does look milder than average for the next week. And expect these to trend warmer over the next few days. When we look at them later in the week, I suspect we will see these temperature anomalies being even more into the warmer category. Precipitation anomalies, as we just explained, it does look quite dry, albeit a little bit more unsettled. So, yes, precipitation is coming out drier than average. How often have we said that this winter? So, this is the GFS then for Friday. We've got high pressure to the south, we've got low pressure out to the northwest. We're bringing in these mild west-southwesterly winds. We run through into the weekend, keeping a lot of ridging going down across the south. You notice the isobars are coming through Scotland and Northern Ireland, so it looks a little bit more unsettled up there over weekend, some bands of rain, but I think there'll be a fair amount of dry weather for England and Wales. Quite a useful weekend, really, fairly mild and pretty dry. We're going to next week still with the same basic setup. High pressure to the south, low pressure is to the north and west. That looks dry to the south and mild, a little bit more unsettled in the north. By the time we get through to day 10, which is Thursday 23rd of February, just signs it turning a little bit more generally unsettled then. Quite an active cold front probably swinging down across the country and starting to introduce somewhat colder air to the far north as well. So a little bit cooler and more unsettled by day 10 on this morning's GFS. These are the temperatures that the GFS model is predicting over the next week or so. So as I say, today, temperatures probably no better than around average, away from the far southwest where it is pretty mild there, 10, 11 degrees. But most places in single digits, and that's really just because we're left over with the cold weather that we had over the weekend. Moving through to tomorrow, temperatures again just lifting up a little bit, but it's really on Wednesday that we start to see those temperatures pushing up, going to around 10 or 11 degrees. That'll feel really very mild indeed. We get through into Thursday again. It's looking pretty mild there on Thursday, with temperatures again around 10 11 degrees, something like that, especially so for the south. Into Friday again, very mild temperatures, and these mild temperatures continue into the weekend. 10 11 degrees on Saturday, up to 12 or 13 possible on Sunday, and then early next week, look at this, that's around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. That does look very mild indeed there. So that's more like what you'd expect in early April than the middle part of February. Definitely a taste of spring. And then finally we go through to Tuesday next week. Still looking very mild in the south, a little cooler up in the north. Moving through to the east end of the earth, very similar. High pressure is down to the south, low pressure is up to the north and west as well. We go through into the weekend, and a little bit cooler there for the north, but still a lot of high pressure down to the southwest. And early next week, same basic setup is high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, so it does look generally mild, fairly dry for the south, some rain at times up in the north. We finish up on day 10, still in the basic setup. The high pressure is there through France and Spain, low pressure out to the north and west, and we're dragging up this southwesterly flow. So for the south, it looks mild and dry, possibly very mild and dry with taste of spring. For the north, a little bit more unsettled, but even there, the temperatures will be above average. Hasn't been much interest here for anybody who likes cold weather, but as we extend beyond day 10 with the GFS, it is hinting that we might turn things a little bit colder this morning. So just very quick to finish off with the extended part of the GFS, and what happens is that we take this ridge into the central Atlantic and drop this trough southwards across Western Europe, and that eventually starts to pull the winds into the north. So it's going to the end of February now, in fact up to the start of March, as far as we can go with the GFS this morning. Is Wednesday the 1st of March, when it looks much colder in a northerly wind there. That would be bringing a return of night frost and possibly even some snow. The upper air temperatures going really quite cold indeed. That's a very, very long way off, and we shouldn't be taking it too seriously. We saw the GFS ensembles that there's not really a great deal of support for that either, but I suppose it's an option, and it would tie in with the stratospheric warming, of course, that we had in the early part of February. That's around when you'd expect the effects to begin to kick in, possibly produce some colder conditions. So it may be we get through after a burst of spring over the next week to 10 days. It might be we get through to the very end of February and actually into the start of March, and we'll turn things a lot cold. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But for the next week to 10 days, it's very mild conditions coming up. So if you like an early burst, but spring-like weather, enjoy it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.